Hello there, I am on location again on Route 66 here. This is one of our famous Oklahoma locations, Pops on Route 66. And there it is, the enormous Coke bottle behind us, the cool little cafe diner thing there as well. I will give you more information on that later, but here we go. Pops on Route 66 is in Arcadia, Oklahoma, and it is a relatively modern addition to Route 66, built in 2007. So you can frequently see all kinds of really cool classic cars parked here, like we did. And then of course you can see your motorcycle groups coming by just like this one did. The sculpture itself is appropriately 66 feet tall for Route 66, and it's built out of neon tubes. Though at nighttime it's actually lit by brightly colored LED lights. There's a gas station here and also a 1950s themed diner, and I'm just telling you, their sweet potato fries are the best I've ever had. The walls are lined with hundreds of rare soda bottles, and you can buy all kinds of extremely weird flavors, including ranch dressing, but you can keep that one as far as I'm concerned. And now on to art. Alright, so as you can see, I did a little quick pencil sketch, and now I'm beginning to mix up my sky color, and it's basically just watered down ultramarine blue. And I'm going to go ahead and do a nice wash all over the entire background here, well, up until I hit the grass, of course, and then make it a little bit darker at the top, only it is very hot and very sunny out here today, so things are starting to dry very quickly. So I give it a spray with my little spray bottle in order to keep it from having any awkward marks in the sky. While that's drying, which shouldn't take very long, I'm going to go ahead and mix up some olive green and add a little bit of sap green into that. And I'm going to use that for the basis of the grass color here. So just starting to add that in here, making sure that I paint around everything else that's there. Since that's looking a little bit too yellow for my liking, I go ahead and add in some sap green to give it a little bit of a cooler tone in certain areas. Next I mix some Payne's gray with some burnt umber, make that very watery, and we're going to use that for good old Route 66 itself right here. For the tree line in the distance, I'm going to start with sap green. I'm going to add a little bit of burnt umber, and then to kind of cool that down for the background, we're going to add a little bit of ultramarine blue to that. I'm going to go ahead and add that color in here for the tree line, and you'll notice that even though this is gouache, I am actually using this in a very watery manner, just pretty much like watercolor, only slightly opaque. And then I'm going to go ahead and add in where you can kind of see through the giant Coke bottle, the little ribs there. And then I'm going to go ahead and paint around everything except for this little tree that's right here. And then I'm going to come back in and make that darker because it's closer to us, even if it's just a little bit closer. And then I go ahead and use a thicker consistency of that same color for the shadows along the tree line, along the bottom. Next I'm mixing a little bit of burnt sienna and burnt umber together to get a kind of a medium brown for these round structures that are sitting all around the sculpture. I'm thinking those are used as barriers to keep people from crashing into the statue. I'm not entirely sure, but either way, I guess they could be used as benches as well. Maybe they serve a double purpose. But anyway, we've got those in here, and now I'm using a little bit darker green for the shadows of the sculpture itself and also of the little bollards. Of course, we've got to add in the trunk of this little tree in the middle distance, and I think that is Payne's gray and burnt umber. Now I'm mixing a little bit more Payne's gray into my brown mixture, and we're going to use that for the shadows on the little barrier things. For the Coke bottle itself, it's a white structure, but against this bright sky, it actually looks kind of grayish purplish. So I'm using Payne's Gray, watering it down a lot and mixing in some Carbazole Violet, and we're just going to begin to paint that in here. The Coke bottle itself is constructed out of ring after ring after ring of all of these neon tubes, and I am not going to sit here and make sure that every single tube is in the exact right position, because they crisscross around each other and then it changes in perspective, and all of that stuff is just too overwhelming to do, as it's so hot out here and so sunny out here. So I'm really just going to go ahead and get kind of an overall sense of the structure of the thing, rather than make this an architectural drawing and drive myself crazy with all the detail. So really it's kind of just got this central pole going right down the middle of it, and then it's got all of those rings around it, and so I'm giving it an overall sense of that. As the perspective gets closer to eye level, it's going to be less and less curved, so the point where it gets to my eye level, it's going to be actually pretty much just straight across, and you won't see any of that curve. Next, I'm mixing a little bit darker Payne's Gray, and we're going to use that for the shadow of the straw and the little structures that you can see in between each one of these little ribs here. It's just a darker thing that you can see on the right side. Adding a little bit of depth here. I can see a little bit of a warmish light glow on the left side here coming from the sun, so I'm going to use a little bit of lemon yellow, a little bit of cadmium red, and add in quite a bit of white, and we're going to use that to add this kind of like light glow on the left side here. It kind of disappeared on me, so I'm going to go ahead and add that over the top of it yet again, just to make sure that you can actually see that glow. I've got a bunch of gaps here between all of these little ribs, so I'm going to come back in with all of my different greens and different colors that I used to paint it before and fill that in. And do forgive my hair blowing around in front of the picture, but that is the way it goes outdoors sometimes, especially if you don't put your hair back in a ponytail. Now we need some pretty severe shadows here because of how bright it is out today, so I'm adding in some nice lovely dark green for the cast shadows and some lovely dark brown for the cast shadows on the bottom of these little guys right here. Next, I'm using just a plain white to go ahead and do the highlights on top of the straw and any other areas that I see. Next, I'm using some Payne's Gray to fake in a few silhouettes of cars here. Definitely not going to go crazy with detail on that. Mixing some Payne's Gray into my green mixture, and we're going to use that for a very dark green so that we can have some more shadow and definition into the trees and background. I think we could use some variation in our grass, so I'm using some yellow ochre here to dry brush in some texture. And then I'm going to come back in with a darker mix of green to add some more texture along the bottom as well. And honestly, I think that's about all I'm going to do to it while I'm sitting out here because it is too flipping hot. So here is the finished product of what I'm going to do here, and slowly pan up to the sculpture itself. Now that I'm back in my studio, I'm going to go ahead and kind of intensify that warm glow that I saw on the left side because I feel like it got a little bit lost. So I'm just going to go ahead and mix up some more of that color
make it a little bit more white, and we're going to add that in here and just kind of sharpen up that detail just a little bit. And then I'm going to use my Payne's gray mixture to go ahead and add a few more of these little struts going down through here, just to add a little bit more of the detail of the structure itself. And then I'm going to call it a day. And here's the finished product from a very hot day out on Route 66.